Hi and hello. I hope all is well with you wherever you are in the world today, and welcome. I would like to give my thoughts and feelings about Evil Dead Rise and Evil Dead Burn over here. I recently saw the two movies back to back, and I have a lot of feelings that are not necessarily good about this franchise. Evil Dead is a super rad cool franchise that I've been following for some time, ever since I was little and I saw the first movie. It scared the pants off of me when I was just a little kid. I should probably not have been seeing that movie considering my age, but I was watching horror movies since a young lad. Anyways, um, Evil Dead is a lot of fun, right? The first movie was super cool. The second movie, the third movie has its own sort of flavor to it. It's not so scary, the third movie. It's more wacky and zany, but still has its place in the franchise. In addition to that, there's also Ash versus the Evil Dead, which is a television series. And I watched a considerable amount of that as well. Haven't finished it all, but I've been following Evil Dead and love this franchise. So I wanted to give my feelings about Rise and Burn to just share some concerns I have with the franchise itself moving forward. So I think that the most important detail about Evil Dead is Bruce Campbell's character Ash. The story for the longest time has been centered around Ash. The video games, the movies, the series, and so on and so forth. And when Rise came out, I was hopeful and I watched it when it came out, and then I watched it recently again to sort of get myself in gear for Burn. And when I watched Rise, I remember feeling like it was enjoyable, but also interesting that the movie is going in this sort of direction because the characters in the movie didn't seem particularly interesting, as Ash is so connected to the lore of the Evil Dead, whereas these characters seemed detached in a significant way. And I wondered if we would be following their journey, dealing with the repercussions of the Deadites and so on and so forth. And so as time went on and Burn has come out, I was hopeful to see what they were going to be doing next with this movie. And I also wondered, would I like Burn more or less than Rise? Before I get into that, though, I did kind of want to give my, I don't know, opinion of Rise. I would say 3 out of 5 stars. If I'm going to give Evil Dead 1 to 5 stars, I'm going to give three 4 stars. I'm going to give Rise 3 stars because I found it to be underwhelming and there was a lot of confusing details about the story itself. Some of the moments in the movie were confusing to me. For instance, there was, I appreciated the violence. Let's just remove that from this grading analysis because the violence is there. There's plenty of it. And if that is what you like to watch from an Evil Dead movie, you are going to get it not just in Rise, but you will also get it in Burn. So all the playful, macabre, gory violence is there in both these movies. So I'm not going to criticize that aspect of the movie. I'm going to be criticizing some of the details of Rise and Burn, other details of Rise and Burn. So, for instance, in Rise, we're dealing with a family that seemingly has gone through some sort of a divorce. The husband and wife have been divorced. The father is removed from the household. He's not a part of the children's lives anymore, even though the kids are considerably old. They seemingly have lived a long time with their father, and he's no longer participating as a member of the family in any meaningful way, or at least that's what the story puts forward. You have a young child, two teenagers, and you have this aunt character, the sister of the mother in the movie. And one detail that I thought was sort of awkward with this movie were these moments that the movie wanted to push forward the sentimentality aspect where you want to sympathize with the children who are suffering as a result of this divorce, but also watching as their mother has become possessed by the evil dead, by the Deadites. She becomes a Deadite. She becomes psychotic and deranged and dead and demonic and all these things. And one by one, as she transforms into a Deadite, other people in the building also become Deadites. Other family members become Deadites. Now, this all has this sort of like metaphorical allegory going on that perhaps when a family goes through something like that, it could suggest this is like a psychological trauma. These people are dying as a result of this, all the repercussions of a divorce that unforeseen repercussions of a divorce. This could be something that the director is playing with. Um, I have thoughts about that and I'll save that for later. But for now, I just want to talk about some of these awkward moments. Like there were scenes in the movie that were so forced and shoehorned in, trying to get you to have a heart for the children involved in the story. But they were totally forced in awkward moments because at one point in the movie, they are in the living room of what is, by all intents and purposes, a small apartment. Just in the other room is a Deadite alive and chasing them, attempting to kill them. The aunt and the smallest child are running for their lives down the hallway, only feet away from the Deadite who is chasing them, attempting to reach the front door of the apartment to escape, and they trip and fall over themselves in the panic. And in this moment, the child looks at the aunt and asks her if she's pregnant and is going to be a mother. And there's this soft, seemingly like heartfelt tone that the movie's pushing in this instance. And I thought, what is this moment doing here? Why are they doing this at this point? They are in panic, running away for their lives, and only feet away, the evil dead is just behind them. Like it just felt like this movie continued to push down this narrative of sentimentality that was so forced, and it didn't pick its moments well at all, if that was what they were attempting to achieve. And it was so confusing because this happened time and time again through the course of the movie, where death and danger is only feet away, seconds away from potentially killing them. And they kept having these awkward, stilted moments of sentimentality pushed in. And I just was so confused because I thought, wait a minute. Are they doing they're doing this on purpose, obviously. The director is the director. He did this on purpose, but am I supposed to be taking this seriously? Am I supposed to be having a heartfelt moment right in this instance of panic? Or am I supposed to be sort of laughing at the awkward stiltedness of it because it's an Evil Dead movie, which shouldn't be taken too seriously anyway? I can't tell. I can't decide, because Evil Dead traditionally is sort of a kind of comedy in many ways. It's sort of a slapstick horror movie, if that makes any sense. It's a horror movie, but it's so over the top ridiculous that it's almost kind of a slapstick movie, thanks to Bruce Campbell and his acting talent. But this movie takes itself way too seriously, and these characters, these actors and actresses, are not Bruce Campbell. They do not present as somebody who's acting as a Bruce Campbell type character. They are not cartoon wacky people. They are serious people. And so when they are introducing these moments into the film, it felt very strange to me and out of place. So, getting back to the allegory that I spoke to earlier, I don't like it for Evil Dead because, in my opinion, Evil Dead isn't supposed to be this sort of like deeper allegory for psychological trauma of like potentially a family divorce. Like instead of Ash, who just went into a cabin, found the Necronomicon, summoned the Evil Dead, this all happened to him. He stumbled into it. the Evil Dead started tormenting him, killing the people he cared about, and now he's pissed and he is now dealing with the Evil Dead. Then he goes into, as you may know from the third movie, the Army of Darkness. He goes back into time and he fights the Evil Dead there, and it's hilarious and wonderful. It's a great movie. It's silly, it's over the top, but it isn't like some sort of allegory for some deeper psychological trauma that Bruce is enduring. He's just fighting and beating everyone's ass because he's pissed that this happened to him. And as the course of the story goes on, Ash kind of becomes this expert on how to deal with the Evil Dead, and so now he's like the wise man of like, yeah, I know what to do. I know how to handle this, and so he's like, I've got my boomstick, I've got my chainsaw. You got to do this. We're going to go in there and kick ass, chew bubblegum and kick ass kind of deal, very much a they live sort of deal, it's a very simple premise, but this movie takes itself very seriously, and so I felt like the sentimentality of it was uncomfortable and awkward. And I can say the same is true for Evil Dead Burn, and so I want to get into that movie. I also give it 3 stars as well because they attempted to do the same thing. There's this overarching umbrella allegory going on through the film where the main character, her husband, who was an abusive POS, dies in a tragic car accident, and he probably would have survived, except he stumbled into the Evil Dead. It's worth mentioning here that Evil Dead Rise and Evil Dead Burn are very, very loosely connected in their narratives, but it's very, very loose. And personally, for me, I found the connection that they put into the movie to be thin, extremely thin, and hard for me to wrap my mind around that this is how they're connecting the two movies. This is how the Evil Dead moved from and then into Burn. That connection seems very far fetched and hard for me to wrap my mind around. It begins, as you can see from the film poster for Rise, with this lake incident. The movie Rise ends at the lake where it sort of goes full circle on itself. Well, Burn kind of picks up from there at the lake. And the same character that you see here in this poster, I believe that is the woman from the lake in the movie. It's hard for me to really discern the features of her face because in Rise there was like this sort of what do you call it, a drone with like the propellers, it like sliced up her face, so she has very distinctive scar features on her face as a result of this when she went over to become a deadite, and she's swimming around in the lake. Well, the same character shows up in Burn, and they introduce her character, and she is a deadite, and she burns the husband to death in his car after he crashes it after a night of drinking and being a abusive POS to his wife. So getting over to Burn now, we're in the story. The husband is dead as a result of running into the character from the Rise movie, and now she's dealing with the trauma of not only having to heal from letting go of this garbage husband that she had, seemingly wanting to not be a part of his life anymore, getting tired of his BS, but also trying to separate herself from his family, who are also seemingly abusive and weird in their own way and their own rights. Now, when it comes to the sentimentality of Burn, I actually had no problem with how the director put that aspect forward in the movie, even though I still don't think that the allegory is appropriate in either one of these two movies. Allegories like this are not appropriate for an Evil Dead movie. I have to say, I think the director for Burn did a better job of presenting it. It didn't feel awkward or out of place the way he put those details into the movie. And so I never felt uncomfortable or am I supposed to be taking this seriously? Am I confused? But there were some things that I was confused about from Burn as well. For instance, there's a scene in the movie where the father of the husband who died, her father-in-law, I should say, um, they're all sitting at the table and he's sort of going through a psychotic break because he's transforming into a deadite, and nobody has caught on yet that he has gone deadite. And so he just looks like their father sitting at the table, and he's losing his grip, right? And he picks up a fork, and at some point, he starts stabbing the dog to death with a fork in front of everybody at the table. Now, there is momentarily shock and surprise, as one could only imagine, from this scene taking place. And so that wasn't as appalling, except that only moments later, because the dad is freaking out, they pin him to the ground. He gets harmed in a certain way, so they throw him in the car. They need to take him to the hospital. He's like having a seemingly like a heart attack type situation. So they start taking him to the hospital, the son and his girlfriend or wife. But when you go back to the household after this horrific scene has just taken place, which would be shocking for anybody, any normal person in a situation like that would be stirred and disturbed. And what the hell was that? Why did our father just start stabbing the dog with a fork? What the hell? That would be so reeling and like what's going on, like it would be so perplexing. But when you go back to the house only moments after this situation has taken place, everyone seems to be acting normal as if nothing had happened. Oh, they're taking father to the hospital, they're burying the dog. That happened too. They buried the dog all within this short time span. No conversations are had about that. There's no questioning what was that about. They're just, nope, that happened. Bury the dog, and then the story moves on. And I just thought that was really weird that nothing can be said about that. Um, and so, of course, as more people become deadites and the torture and all that stuff starts unfolding, the movie goes on from there. So there were moments in this movie that I thought were very weird and strange. And again, I know that it's an Evil Dead movie, and so awkwardness is kind of a part of it. But the issue that I have is that because of Sam Raimi and his directing style, I kind of already knew with Evil Dead 1, 2, and 3 his sort of style. But the way that these movies present themselves as serious horror movies, seemingly only lightly playing on the comedic tropes of the original movie, um, I was just very confused by it, I should say. It felt out of place. And so it's like kind of pick your lane. Are you trying to be a serious horror movie, or are you trying to be a comedy horror movie? And if you're trying to be a comedy horror movie, then the way these movies present themselves are not appropriate for a comedy horror movie like The Evil Dead with Ash. And so the other thing I wanted to kind of get into is, as I spoke to at the beginning of this video with Evil Dead Rise, I was curious, wondering, I should say, what are we going to be doing with these characters from this film, the ones that we became attached to through their story with the Deadites? What would we be doing with them? Apparently nothing. And so when Burn introduces itself with their new cast of characters, a new storyline, what will we be doing with these characters moving forward that we are now attached to? At this point, I don't know, but seemingly nothing. And so I don't care about the characters from this movie, and I don't care about the characters from this movie. And that's a problem for me because Evil Dead has always had one central hero, Ash. That's an issue. This franchise needs a hero to follow. It needs somebody tethered through every movie moving forward. And I understand that Bruce Campbell can't perform as Ash forever. And I'm not even suggesting that Ash needs to make a triumphant return or anything like that. But what I do think this movie needs is a hero to follow. So they should, if a new director should take the helm and make a movie, find a way to get a hero that we can follow, tie him into Rise, tie him or her, whatever, into Burn, and follow their story dealing with the Evil Dead. Stop making these one offs because nobody is going to remember these people. I already forgot their names. I don't know who they are, and their stories are not very important to me. Although I enjoyed watching the violence and the spectacle of the horror that both these movies introduced, I will say it was a thrill ride. The stories that they presented, I actually don't care about. I very forgettable, very forgettable. The overarching allegory, not that deep, not very thought provoking. Uh, I'm sorry, but it's just, I get it. It's not that big a deal. So let's get back to the basics for the Evil Dead franchise, please. That's just my thoughts. I would like a hero. I would like to see this franchise move forward with somebody I can actually care about going into the future and seeing how they deal with the Evil Dead. And let's bring it into the modern era. We have way better CGI effects now. We can make cool movies that have all these awesome things that you can do, and they have been showcased in both these movies very well. So I'm hopeful in that regard that if they did pick up a hero character that we could follow, they would do a lot of really cool things with that. But let's get back to the basics, please, because I'd like to see one person dealing with the Evil Dead time and time again, finding his way through it all. Maybe he runs into new people and helps them solve their problems, but a person who's involved, invested in solving the mystery of the Necronomicon and the Book of the Dead. And let's deal with that. Let's take this story where it needs to go and stop trying to push forward these one-off narratives that nobody's going to care about. I'm so, maybe nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, but personally for me, I don't care about the people in either one of these movies. So they're very forgettable, and they're not going to be there when the next. I don't believe they're going to be around when the next movie comes up. So with that said, I think that's what this movie needs right now. Is the franchise needs a hero. That's what it needs. That's what the Evil Dead needs. We need to find a new kind of Ash. So thanks for listening to my spiel. Wait, before I go, I want to mention this. I didn't watch Rise in the theater, but I did see Burn in the theater late in its theatrical run. So the room itself was kind of empty, and so there was about 7 people in the room. And to the right of me was one man sitting at the end of the aisle. He left halfway through Burn. I wondered why he left. Was he enjoying the movie? Did something come up that was more important that he had to take care of right away that forced him out of the theater? I don't know. But I wondered, like, this man, he seemed to be an older gentleman. I wondered if you're in a movie like The Evil Dead Burn, you have to know you're seeing an Evil Dead movie. So the shocking gore and violence, was that too much for him? And so he left? Did he find it to be too cheesy? What was his problem? I wish I could ask what he thought of The Evil Dead and why he left the movie theater during Burn. What was he expecting out of Burn? I wondered. Did he not know that he was in an Evil Dead movie and didn't know what to expect? Is he one of these types of moviegoers who just goes to the movies just to see whatever he sees, and if he likes it, he likes it, and if he doesn't, he leaves? I don't know. I don't know. I wish I could interrogate him and get down to it because he left. And then also, I never watched these people leave. I didn't notice them leave, but the other people in the room by the end of the film that were sitting behind us at the top of the theater row, they were gone when the credits started to roll because I stood up and I turned around just to survey the room and they were all gone. So it was just me and my girlfriend in the room by ourselves, and I hadn't even noticed that the other people left. So a lot of people left the movie, and I'm like, wait a minute. It wasn't it's not a bad movie. It wasn't a bad movie. I'm not saying I'm criticizing the franchise because I love and care about this franchise. I'm not saying these are bad movies. I'm saying they have interesting, awkward choices that were made in either one of these movies. And I just want to talk about that. But I didn't think Burn was a bad movie worthy enough to leave the theater for. It was enjoyable for what it was. I still enjoyed a lot of stuff about the movie. So why did these people walk out of the theater? Random. I've been in movies where people have left the theater, but I've never been in a movie where everyone left the theater. I was myself and my girlfriend were the only ones left in the room by the credits rolling. I'm not trying to say that Evil Dead Burn was a bad movie, and I wish I could talk to people and find out what they thought of the movie as they were leaving the room to ask why they're leaving. Um, but that happened. That happened. People left the theater. So, anywho's, all right. Well, thanks for listening and checking this out. I've been a fan of The Evil Dead for a long time. I've read two of Bruce Campbell's books, one of his autobiographies, talking about how he created The Evil Dead with Sam Raimi. It's a very fascinating story. Bruce Campbell is a legend. The guy rules. I mean, and also, I'm from Portland, Oregon. Bruce Campbell, I believe, lives in Oregon as well. I follow him on Instagram and I see a lot of his pictures. He loves to hike, seemingly, so I see a lot of familiar scenery in his photographs, and it's kind of cool that he's in Oregon with me. So, with that said, I really hope that they solve these small, minor issues. I'd like to see a hero for the Evil Dead, and let's make good movies going forward. Bye for now. Take care.